Whoa there, Atla. Welcome back. And look at you picking up on yet another Halloween themed story. Tell you what, I'll read it for you. Halloween at the Baldhu Place. Written by Dr. Plague. Narrated by Gamma Akutabi. You see him? Clancy asked Roger. The two of them crouched behind the fence. Shut up, or he's gonna hear us. Roger hissed, pressing his eye to the splintery wood. It was after sunset, and if their mothers realized they weren't home yet, the boys would have been in big trouble. They didn't care though. They wanted to look at this mysterious fellow who lived in the creepy old house at the end of the block. The one who only came out after dark. Thomas Baldhu was known to almost everyone in Shambles. It was a small town, a town built on coal and lumber, and the population was rarely over 20,000. As such, the large and foreboding house at the end of Fortner Lane stood out like a sore thumb in a town of mostly trailers and ranch homes. The house in question was known as Baldhu Place, and it loomed like a gargoyle at the end of the cul-de-sac. No one knew how long it had been there, but some of the kids had seen a picture of the manor in old paintings from the early days of the town. They say it had been occupied by the town's founder, and when he'd been arrested after a string of children had gone missing, someone new had taken up residence there. Someone who only came out after dark. The mob hadn't waited for justice to be served, it was said. They had dragged Thomas from his cell and beheaded him in the street, something that was the custom in certain places. Afterwards, the townspeople had wanted to go and see what sort of things the town's founder had in his now empty home. But when the lights kept coming on and a strange figure was seen around the grounds, they thought the magnificent manor might be haunted. They assumed it would eventually fall to pieces without someone to take care of it. But instead, the house remained and even seemed to thrive under the care of whoever owned it. People had seen a shadowy figure making changes to the house for years, maintaining the grounds and fixing the damage to the ancient 3-story. But no one had ever met him. That was 100 years ago, and as the town grew, up the house remained as a mystery within shambles. No one in town still believed the house was haunted, but they knew someone was living there. Whoever they were extremely reclusive. When people came to the house, no one ever answered the door. If you approached a person while they were in the yard, they always retreated inside. No one knew who they were or what relation that might be to the old founder. But they did know one thing about the owner of the house, and that was that he loved Halloween. The owner of the house may not be social the other 364 days of the year, but on Halloween, they threw the gates open and passed out the choicest candy and the best tricks. As the boys watched, the yard was already being prepared for the coming holiday. The front porch was festooned with pumpkins. The yard was set with gravestone and half-buried caskets, and the cobwebs and bats were thick in every tree. The trees in the yard always looked skeletal, despite how much attention was paid to the lawn, and they added to the aesthetic of the house. No one could be completely sure, but everyone was pretty sure that the creepy nature of the homestead was intentional. The wood was dark, painted a deep brown, and stained like dark chocolate. The windows always glow with something like candlelight, and the house just seemed to lean malevolently. Beyond those gates, it was Halloween every day for whoever lived there. "What's he doing?" Clancy asked. The crack he was peeking through wasn't very wide, and Roger had the better vantage point with his knothole. "He's filling orange bags with leaves for jack-o'-lanterns." "How does he see?" Clancy asked, the screech crash of the man's rake constant as he collected up his medium. "Don't know. He doesn't even have the porch light on. Maybe he's raking by pumpkin light?" Clancy wanted to look up over the fence, but he didn't dare. Both boys assumed the man would just leave if he thought they were washing, but could never be sure. When Clancy's mother called his name, the boy stiffened like a goose had walked over his grave. They could see the person in the yard stiffen too, looking in the direction of the call as he turned to the fence. In the gathering shadows, they could see that he was dressing jeans and a sweater, clothes that would look as acceptable for yard work as they would on a homeless man. The garments hung off of him, his body thin and emaciated, and people in town thought he might be sick. His voice, however, did not match his appearance. The voice everyone heard when they did business with him was rich, cultured, and full of vigor. Many of the women secretly held affection for him, saying his voice sounded like one of the men from the romance novels covers they all read while their husbands were at work. They will have to imagine what his face might look like though, because he never came into town. He will call the local business and tell them he needed supplies delivered to his house about twice a year. Wood, decorations, candy, various and sundry things he used to fix up the house or get ready for the holidays. He never called the grocer or the butcher, however, and people weren't sure he was eating up there. Whatever it was, it kept him going, and he continued to tirelessly work on the house and the grounds by moonlight. "Roger?" came the shrill cry from further down the block. "Roger, it's past curfew, boy. You better get home before your dinner gets cold." "Crap," Roger said, taking his eyes off the yard as he turned back towards home. "She sounds mad. We better go," Clancy whispered, feeling very exposed in the pool of light from the street light. "Yeah, might be Are you boys quite alright?" said a cultured voice from behind us. Both boys jumped like someone had lashed them with a belt. They looked back, shaking as the shadow of a stranger fell across them. In the gloom of the yard, he had appeared to be a large, muscular man, but now he loomed over the boys like a giant from a fable. Both had barely gotten a good look at the stranger before the lamp overhead popped and left them standing in the gathering gloom. Both yelled in terror, scrambling away from the fence as they beat feet up the street, as startled by the lamp as the man. He watched them go, his face obscured by the gloom except for his eyes. Both boys would swear later that they had seen two red flickers where his eyes should be. Both boys will also swear that his head had been a grinning skull until the day they died. "It was probably just a mask, Roger," Clancy said as they walked up to the school next day. He could still feel the sting his dad had put in his bottom for being out past dark. And his mother had scolded him for bothering the nice man who lived at Baldhu Place. He's never hurt anyone, and he'll never feel like he can introduce himself to the neighborhood if you kids keep bothering him. She had color a little as she said it, and some of the snap in his father's hand could have been because he noticed. Many of the men in the town were hoping that the mysterious man would stay in his house and leave their wives to their daydreams.
"Max nothing," Roger said. "That was a skull with 2 red eyes. You and I both saw it."
"I don't know," Clancy hedged, not wanting another whipping from his dad for bothering people. His dad had been passed up for another promotion at the paper mill, and he was ornery these days. His mother had tried to console him, saying he would get it the next time. But he'd been sitting on the den with a case of beer and a foul mood lately.
"What I know is that someone with a skeleton head is living in our town, and we should let people know about it."
"Yeah?" Clancy said, skeptically. "And how are we gonna do that? Mr. Baldhu never comes out or lets people see him, so how are we gonna do anything?"
"Just so happens that we don't need him to come out. In 2 nights, Mr. Baldhu would open his gates and let kids in to trick or treat. He always had a spooky display where he hides so he can give people a good scare. If we can get close, we can snap a picture and give proof. You still got that instant camera?"
Clancy nodded hesitantly. "Yeah, but if I break it running away, my mom will literally kill me. It was a Christmas present and it..."
"We won't break it,"
Roger assured him.
"Once we get proof, we'll be heroes. Imagine how cool we'll be if we snap a picture of the ghost that haunts Baldhu Place."
Clancy thought about it. As he thought of the kids at school chanting his name, he decided that it might be worth the risk. He and Roger will be legends, and a reputation like that could take them all the way through middle school.
"What's your costume this year?"
Roger asked, thought it sounded like it didn't matter. "I've got a cardboard box robot that I made last year," Clancy said. His dad had helped him make it last year, back when he was in a better mood, and Clancy had added a little more spray paint the following weekend. That had earned him a loud scolding from his dad too. Apparently, he had used the good spray paint and not the cheap shit he had bought for him last year. Clancy had said he was sorry and finished up with the other can. It looked good now, and the thought that he might not get to wear it made him feel a little sad. It would surely be too small next year.
"I've got another ninja costume that my grandma gave me for my birthday this year. Mom bought me a new one without thinking about it, and if we go as ninjas, we can make a hasty retreat once we get the picture."
The logic was sound to Clancy. Ninjas will be faster than a clunky box robot, and he agreed to meet at his house on Friday night.
"Bring your camera and don't be late. I want to hit some houses before we go to get the big prize."
It was edging up on 9 o'clock when the boys got to the gates of Baldhu Place. A few houses had turned into a 3-hour tour of 6 different neighborhoods, and when Roger realized what time it was, he had said a word that would have made Clancy's mom wash his mouth out with soap. The boys had to run back to their neighborhood and left their candy back at Roger's house before heading out again. Roger's mother had asked if they didn't have enough candy, but Roger said that they had one more house to hit before they packed it in.
"We have to get candy from Baldhu's house. He has the best treats in town," She had told them to be quick, and the two ninjas had headed back into the night. Now they were just standing here before the lair of the beast. Clancy was feeling a little unsure of the plan. "Let's just go back, Roger," Clancy begged. "We have enough candy and we don't really need to." But Roger stepped into the yard like he hadn't even heard him. Roger intended to get his treat this year. Clancy was left with no choice but to turn around or follow after, and his loyalty to his friend was too great to back down now. The yard was set up like a graveyard, and they walked towards the house. Clancy jumped as a zombie lurched out of the coffin that had been set up. It growled and roared before descending back down again as it got ready for its next victim. Roger laughed as the kid in the ghost costume jumped in time with Clancy, glancing around to make sure he was the last before proceeding. It was late now, and the boys were the last two left on the property. If they were going to make their move, now would be the time. They made their way up the walkway, graves erupting to reveal zombies or skeletons that pop up with a mechanical growling noise. He had really gone all out this year, it seemed, and the boys expected a grave to contain the mysterious Mr. Baldhu at any time. He would come stomping out dressed as a skeleton or zombie, and they could trick him into bending down so they could snatch his mask and reveal his face. Clancy was ready with his camera, and Roger had seen him snap several panic shots as they went. The closer they got to the house without encountering him, the more their nerves jangled. With every crackly, mechanical growl and yowl that split the air, the boys' trepidation rose. And as they mounted the stairs to the house, they felt a cold chill run up their backs. They had come midway when the door to the house opened up, revealing a rocking chair with a headless body seated in it. He held a bucket of candy on his lap, the chair creaking menacingly with every sway of the occupant. "Get the camera ready," Roger whispered, sneaking up to the chair. Clancy nodded, standing just inside the door as he tried to stop his knees from shaking. Roger came up to the bowl, his eyes boring into the headless thing as he reached into the mound of candy. He expected the jump, expected the scare, but he never expected the direction it might come from. Clancy watched through the little window, hands shaking as he waited to snap the picture. All at once, Roger shot his free hand from where the head should be on the rocker, trying to find its head. It should be right below the neckline, an easy grab. But as Roger patted the spot and found it solid, he cried out in pain as something took hold of his rooting hand. He had been so intent on the shoulders, he hadn't bothered to take his hand from the candy bowl. Now, something had a hold of it, and Roger was afraid it would tear the finger off. Clancy, help me!" he yelled, but the door slammed shut then, sealing their fate. As the man stood up, Roger pulled his hand free of the bowl, and Clancy screamed in terror as the bloody skull jumped happily at it. It was an old skull, the bones red with blood, and the teeth were turning red as Roger's finger was ground beneath the teeth. Roger shook it only once. The pain was too great to have it move much, and when the meaty snap washed over the boys, the skull hit the ground with nearly half the finger in its mouth. Roger fled, pounding on the door as Clancy sputtered and cried for someone to help them. His camera flashed a few more times,
but what it caught was anyone's guess. When the body bent down to get the head, tucking it under its arms, the skull seemed to tut as it whirred down the finger into its non-existent throat. Terribly sorry, boys. I know it's bad manners and a touch barbaric, but Bloody Bones here does love his treat on Halloween. I have to limit him. Missing children do make such a fuss. But, the skull said as its bones turned up abnormally, Halloween is such a hectic time. Sometimes children go missing for one reason or another. The boys cowered as he came towards them, but their screams fell on deaf ears as Bloody Bones and Rawhead went about their business. The boys were searched for, but never found. The police came and searched Baldhu Place, but they never found the boys or its mysterious owner. Baldhu Place continued to stand to this day, and every Halloween, there's a grand event with canyon decorations. Supplies are still delivered, the bills are always paid, and children sometimes go missing. No one could know that when the townspeople beheaded Thomas Baldhu, they will create a legacy that will outlast even the town. None of them could know what they will create with the swing of that simple axe, or how it will haunt the town forevermore. And that's today's story, Outlaw. I hope that you enjoyed it. I thoroughly like it. I do enjoy the writing that Dr. Plague does. And this one is amazing. The fact that he created a legend by combining things from another story. First, you think it's one entity, but in reality, it's two entities in one. The Headless Horseman. That's the vibe that I got at first. I thought it was the Headless Horseman. But no, it's actually two bodies in one. Like the creator, which is Thomas Baldhu, and the creator, the founder of the town, not the creator, the founder of the town, Thomas Baldhu, and Bloody Bones. And that's quite cool and interesting nonetheless. And quite a twist to a Halloween story. Some of the stories end up being like quite a close call, or just only one person goes missing while the other person lives. But this time, both the main characters, they're gone. That's it. And the main character is not who you think it was. It's actually the bad guy is the main character without us knowing. I really enjoy that. Well, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a like and a comment, and be sure to check out Dr. Plague's page as well. His YouTube channel is amazing, and he writes a lot of amazing stories. He goes by Erutious as a writer, but we know him as Dr. Plague in here. Okay, and most importantly, like always, I see y'all on the wasteland.